describe for us your first experiences with this church community.
Well, I grew up going to church. I remember when I was about 5 or 6, I used to love to sing, and I discovered that I had a voice, and I would sing at the top of my lungs, and it was just a great experience. And I didn't do it for too long, but I continued to go to church, and then after a while, I also discovered my voice again when I became a teenager. But
Right.
my interests were a little bit different then.
And this is growing up in the Caribbean?
Yes, growing up in the Caribbean.
Uh-huh.
I'm originally from St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I guess you could say I'm a second generation Adventist. And like I said, I grew up in church, and I always associated with the Adventist denomination. But I realized years later that I was just in a denomination, but I wasn't really a Christian.
Right. And how did that develop? How did you come to that?
Well, I had several turning point experiences. One of my very first turning point experiences was when I was living in Miami at the time. I was on my own. And I remember a specific event that really just kind of changed my perspective on what my church believes.
Right.
And when that particular thing happened, I had to say that there might be some truth to this.
Right.
And it really caused me to consider my behavior. It caused me to consider my relationship. And it really helped me to realize that, we really can't just do this relationship thing with Christ by rote. There needs to be intimacy there. And I set out on a journey to get to know the God that I said I believed in.
Right.
Sometimes we say we believe him, but we believe in him, but sometimes we really don't really know what he's about. And so I began to set out on that journey.
Let's parallel that with your musical journey. So how did music start for you?
Well, it started back in the church again when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Like I said, I discovered that I had a little bit of a voice, and so I just enjoyed singing, and I would sing really loud. And then when my friends started teasing me, I decided that I would stop, and so I did. And I stopped for many years, actually.
Right.
And then I discovered that I could sing again when I was about 16. I was a teenager. I was in high school at that point. And, when you're in high school, your priorities are a little different. You try to do things to attract the opposite sex, if you know what I mean. So, my focus was more on getting girls and stuff like that. So once I figured out that I could sing, that was my in, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that's what I began doing. But unfortunately, because I wasn't singing to the glory of God, I was singing for my own glory. It led me out into the world.
Right.
And
this became a career for you?
It did, it did.
Yeah.
It became a career for me. I began to, play in the popular spots in some of the clubs on St. Thomas, and then I moved to Miami and continued doing that very thing.
Right. And can I ask this, what value have you been able to learn from that experience and incorporate into your music now? What did that give you?
I'm not sure. Wow, I've never had anybody ask me that question before. I guess if I were to really think about it, honestly, my first response would probably be nothing, really, because, the more I find myself walking this Christian journey, the more I realize that we ought to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And so I can't really say for sure that there was any value in it other than to help me to appreciate how much better my life is now walking with Christ.
Right. And now your music, since that time, where has your music journey taken you?
Well, the Lord blessed me because when I left the secular music world, the first thing he did was send me to a school to teach.
Right.
I thought he was just going to make a black and white quick transition from
Yeah.
one thing to the other, and then I would be in Victoria, Australia, But it just didn't work out that way. I actually taught music for 5 years in a school system, and it was really tough going. It was really, really tough because my friends were still in the music thing. They were touring. They were telling me all these things about all these exotic places that they had been, and they were telling me about all these high-profile artists that they had been playing with. And the Lord just began to just encourage me and tell me, keep doing what you're doing, and eventually you'll get to do you'll get to do your music. So 5 years later, I began doing my music full time, and it's been a wonderful journey because the Lord is just showing me, how if you walk by faith, He'll show you the evidence of that, and it's just been a real blessing. He's been giving me music and giving me songs that have touched my own life.
Right.
And as a result, seems like it's been touching the lives of other people. So I'm grateful for that as well.
Yeah, praise God. And now, your church experience now, can you describe for us, if you think of church at its best, what does that look like for you?
Well, to me, church at its best would be several things. The first thing would be a church that is where the demographic is well represented from all countries of the world. One of the things I find is that there's just a lot of division. There's you got the old people over here and then the young people over there, and I'd like to see everybody together. Yeah, because we're really all on the same mission. And what's that mission? The mission is to preach the gospel. Right. And once the gospel is preached, all of this will be over, and then we can go home and be with, and I believe that when we get to heaven, there ain't gonna be a young people's side and an old people's side. Well, that, they ain't gonna have no old people there anyway. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, that's kind of one of my, pet peeves. I think that that I wish there would be more mentoring between older people and younger people, so that the heritage of this wonderful message that we have could be handed down to the younger people. Another thing I would like to see in as far as an ideal church would be a church that is more community oriented. Right. Jesus, didn't stay in one place, and he didn't, build a big mega church and just sit there. But what he did was he made sure that he ministered to everybody's needs. He went out there and met the needs of people. He healed the sick. And whenever people came to him, he would always ask them, "What can I do for you?" Yeah. And so I would like to see the church be more community involved.
And that is as sweet and as beautiful as your song and your voice. So thank you so much, man.
Praise God, man.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Cheers.